But I did just want to go over, so we have the direct reading dosimeter here. We also have the chargers. Is anyone familiar with the charger for the direct reading dosimeter? So this is just to give you, if you did have 1,050,000 of these for workers during the shifts, once you change shifts, of course, you would want to zero them out and then reassign them to each worker. If not, then you have to do a lot of documentation. Your safety officers, you're going to have to sign in and out, and then when they start again, sign in and out. But if you're familiar with these, you know for a fact if you go like this, it's already jumped. Same thing as if you do it on the charger, you have to be very careful bringing it up because just the jerk and they just move. So these are very, I don't want to say, yes, that's a good word. I don't want to say unreliable because they're not. It's just temperament.
Sometimes they move just for fun.
And right, I said this. It's probably already moved. And sometimes they will go off scale and you can't quite bring back the little needle no matter what you do. So you just keep trying to recharge it and it just won't come. And it's just temperament.
I know this started like at TMI. They were pretty popular back then.
Yes.
And they gave one to Jimmy Carter. But it already had a reading.
Oh, that had to be. Really? How did that go?
Yeah.
I would think that they would have thought about that before you give it to,
I think that's our learning curve now.
You know,
I still see a lot of
They
those in
didn't
the
have,
field. The
they didn't have this
dosimeter
program
still a
at the
lot.
time. So
you do see these a lot, and people do have them, mainly because they're a cheap option. If you have to give out things to a lot of people, the last thing people want is to, I don't have my badge on, if have a bunch of OSLs or something they have to keep track of, they have to have spares for whenever there is an emergency. Nobody wants to keep that because that's expensive. So these are a cheap option. These are actually not an expensive option. These now are running, what are they, about $800-900, or are they above $1,000 now? The Canberras, they were pretty not cheap, but not like overly priced. These are the Canberras. They're really great because they can be a PRD or electronic dosimeter. You can basically use it, but if you push that dose button, you can just see your dose. The other great thing about these is that when you're going to a response, they give you what we call a stay time. So if you have a set limit, if you say that you don't want your responders to get anything more than 5 millirem or something like that, then you would put that in here as an action level. And you would hit this button called alarm. And depending on where you are, the dose rate in the area where you are, it will give you the number of hours that you can stay in that area before you get that dose limit. So it all is dependent on what the dose rate is at the time. So people tend to like these, especially first responders, because it gives them that stay time and helps them figure out how long they can be in a certain area. Whereas if you don't have things like this, there's going to be a safety officer having to compute that for you. So these are pretty helpful as well. Lastly, there are different kinds of PRDs. This is a thermo. This is one of the interesting ones. Just be careful, you can lock this thing really easy. I know because I've done it when I didn't know how to use them. If you keep pushing the buttons, it'll lock up on you and then you need a code to unlock it. But once again, it's a PRD/electronic dosimeter as well. The thing to remember most about these is they all have different, just like any instruments, they have different starts. So one's going to be more sensitive, one might start at 0.01, one might start at 0.1, it all are micro or per hour, it just depends. And they have different higher limits too. This I believe goes up to 999 R per hour or 999 R, whereas this may not go nearly as much. So as with any instrument, you have to know your instrument. But that doesn't mean you have to know it because there will be some kind of safety officer there that will tell you that information. So feel free, there's a few of them here. I would like you to come up and just play around. Maybe not touch the sources, but we do have some sources here. One thing to notice is that these will all only do gamma radiation, so you can only detect gamma. You can play with the charger to see if you can And
Can
just
you
give them-
set those electronic ones yourself to what you want them to alarm at, or does someone else have to do that for you?
When you buy them, you can set them, but the manufacturer has to give you set the parameters. So you can change them. Most people don't. They tell the manufacturer what they want the limits to be, and they set it for you. And it's just to prevent other people. You have people who just want to fiddle with buttons.
Right.
And that's what you don't want. The next thing you know, things have been changed.
You've got like this.
They never play with the setting.
Exactly.
Right.
Angels.
Which is why we say, they can't change anything.
I am a first
I'm
responder.
at
Oh,
25
sorry.
hour, I'm out. Play with things.
Oh,
I've hit my turn back.
You're at 25 hour already?
Yeah,
Because I think
I've had my
about
turn.
like the ones that the station supplies to the hospital for like our medical bills and stuff, because it's set to alarm at like 40 MR, which isn't a number for the offsites
You have 5 minutes.
to report or anything.
Yeah, exactly.
That's why I
So
was wondering if it could be changed.
it can be changed, and I think depending on what the emergency is, it will be changed because of a lot of that 40 MR is going to happen. I've gotten that one. You know, in 2 months of wearing my OSL without even knowing it, didn't even realize it. So that can happen pretty easy. But remember, these are kind of meant for members of the public who are helping with the response, not for radiation professionals. So you have to think about who do you want to get this dose and what you want them to get. And you also have to think about where. If this is for a CRC, we're not hoping that they get anything like that. We're hoping that the dose is low enough. So that's why, but it will depend on the incident.
You keep pulling it to the crosshair comes
I don't
to zero.
remember where the wolf I want to say
It's up top.
It's up top.
But but this one is a gamma, but it's
Very
unidirectional.
So is
So
this.
yeah, and because it won't, this is the lantern, it's mainly
Yes,
thorium,
thorium.
but you're getting the gammas from it. But it doesn't matter where you point for the most part because all of these are gamma sources. But you can definitely look at how close you have to be to the source, and when you back away a little bit. Another thing with the Canberra is between each responder you can clear your dose. So make sure to record it and then clear it.
With the Canberras, are they,
kind of the clean
because this is a
zone,
whole issue for the
you know,
planet.
through the portals, and then come out.
They want to switch to electronic,
God, it's these little
but we're
ribbons
sticking with the
stopping
pencil
it.
dosimeters because one, it's easier to train people on them.
It is.
And so like one of the issues is that the ones, the electronic ones that are easy to train on, that are more intuitive, crazy expensive.
It is
And so you,
a lot more money.
Yeah, so you go from like 100, 200 pencil dosimeters to 20.
20,
Yeah, I think
exactly.
what it is,
Do you see a lot of the
it's just
pencil
that
ones
they
stay
set
on their leak tests
and
and
where the
stuff?
clean zone is.
Like that you have to replace?
They come in.
I haven't seen, if people, the only ones that I know who really do any type of leak test or calibration with the pencil dosimeters are people who are licensees. So I used to see them for certain, like, pharmacies, they would use them for their visitors. And they do calibration just because they're a licensee, so they're required. But for emergency response purposes,
And stuff like that, plus that's cold.
I don't know about other places, but from what I see, people are not calibrating these.
Yeah, I've only got one of my
No.
three counties that does, so I guess that's why it is.
No, it's just people are just going to, and because it's not, it's just giving you dose, it's not technically something that they're going to calibrate. We're just using it mainly for worker safety. So if you're using it for worker safety,
For which calibration?
for things like the DRD, like I know people who do calibrate those.
Yes.
You know,
So-
you all,
Yes, I-
it's so many
I couldn't see from
I don't know if
my
there's
phone.
a calibration you send in, but the only
We don't have any,
requirement
so.
is
to leak
to do a
test
drift
it.
It's
test.
just a drift test. So most
That's
people
one thing
don't
that we've been wanting to
calibrate
focus
at
on
all.
Right.
doing Is.
And
matching
same thing with
up
PRDs and electronic
state's
dosimeters,
community
it's similar. They don't
equipment.
do a
So
calibrate
if
as
we
much.
had thing,
We should send you thousands of these. I love this
Oh, the
because
little
you can do a lot.
what the thing actually was, somebody blows up Detroit.
So your
You guys are
Canberras,
involved in some way.
one of the things you can do with these when they're not being used for people too, you can also Depending, everything that we use at the CRC is going to be dependent on what you have. If you don't have a lot of instruments, you're going to use whatever you can. But these might be used to detect the initial sorting. You can use these to go through the line and figure out if you're getting a high reading from someone. That would be a way to use these, or you can use them on your workers. It just depends on, once again, your resources. Everything's going to depend on how many of these you really have and if you can use them.
And the scale of the event.
And the scale of the event, that's true.
Do you know if they're making these anymore?
Yes, these they're still, they stopped the mini brads, I
Or
think.
the ultra radio?
The ultra radiates, yes. The smaller ones, those are the ones that they stopped, but I believe these are still being made. Because many first responders have these. So, but they did stop one, and these are rugged, they're rugged instruments. I know for a fact because I train enough first responders who drop enough instruments and they still work and they have been slugged all over the place, so
That's something that I would see, I can see our.
There are two.